Nobody saw COVID-19 coming, or a global pandemic, or the economy essentially being shut down. And since that time, a resurgence of the economy. And then this whole concept of essential versus non-essential business. And there were winners and losers that came out of that, and some are actually still rebounding. Well, hello and welcome to the Skillwork Forum. I'm Tim. I'm joined with my partner as always here, Brett from Skillwork. And today we're going to be discussing the skilled labor trends that all business leaders should expect as we head into 2021. So we did this about this time last year, Brett, and for those of you that want to go back and look at that, we pretty much nailed all of our predictions for 2020. I know a lot of people didn't see that pandemic coming and all that, but we had predicted all that and the impacts to the economy, as you might remember. At least that's the way I remember it.
I think it was very prophetic, as I recall.
Yes. Well, in actuality, of course, nobody saw COVID-19 coming, or a global pandemic, or the economy essentially being shut down intentionally. And since that time, a resurgence of the economy. We've had a change in administration. I think a year ago, people weren't predicting that, certainly not the current leadership that we have in place right now. And then this whole concept of essential versus non-essential business. And, there were winners and losers that came out of that, and some are actually still rebounding. So we're going to take a look at 2021, the things we're seeing, the impact that we're seeing to your business, and specifically how it might impact your ability to get the skilled craftsmen that you need and that we focus on providing as our core function here at Skillwork.
Yeah, no, that's great, Tim. And so we're excited for 2021, what it holds. I do want to kind of just take a second and just kind of do a little 2020 reflection, I guess, for us as a company. We're a young company, trying to solve a big issue in the skilled trade space. And our model, as crazy as 2021 or 2020 was, overall our model grew. I think the validation of the need grew, which we, Tim and I obviously don't take credit for that. We think, obviously, in our business, we're thankful for the grace God showed on our business in 2020 and an opportunity that we had to help our clients and a lot of the people that traveled with us. And so, one of our, other than, our number one value being, to bring honor to God in everything we do, our number two value is to bring value and respect back to the trades. And so I think we'd be remiss to not recognize, one, the growth we had, but the number of skilled trade guys that we put into the field in 2020 to meet this need, especially in the essential space.
Yeah.
And we had clients who reached out to us probably almost in a desperation mode. And to be honest with you, even a couple of them admitted later that they really weren't convinced that we could get individuals willing to go out, travel in this season, be in the facilities. We had many facilities that were requiring the guys to test for COVID before they could start work, and just there was a lot of things that these guys are they are the salt of the earth, the skilled trade,
the heroes of this. Really,
they are. They fought through and they kept these facilities running. So I'd be remiss in not spending a minute there. But let's jump forward. Let's get into 2021 and. I think obviously, the overall the economy, it probably did a little better than what a lot of people were predicting. We're halfway back, as they say, to pre-pandemic levels, but that still means we got a long way to go. I think there's still going to be a lot of rebound, and I think what we want to spend some time on today is just kind of discussing what we see those trends going to be.
Yeah, for sure. And I echo what you say, Brett, about our guys and some of the stories that we've heard about just extraordinary levels that both our clients and customers that produce America's goods and services, the extent that they went to keep those supply chains going to provide essential goods and services, but our guys and the skilled tradesmen that went. If you go back in the spring of last year, the fear and the uncertainty was off the hook in terms of just it was rampant. People were locked down, but yet these industries required skilled craftsmen and workers to show up every day in the midst of that, and many of our guys were proud to say did that. So just proud of them, and I'm proud to be associated with this business. So this year, as we're in 2021, really there's a lot of things that are going to drive where we go. Some of them are out of our control, some of them maybe that we can do something about. First of which, of course, the 800-pound gorilla is, what's this virus going to do? Is it going to continue to ravage global markets and populations around the world? It has been peaking here of late. The statistics come and go, and you can debate or argue how they're collecting those, but the fact of the matter, it's still alive and well, and it's still impacting a lot of the way people think, the way they go about their day-to-day activities. It's still, the driver of everything we see today. Also, we talked briefly about the administration. Politics, everything is being impacted by politics, in my view, sadly. But politics and this new administration coming into place, we can expect a lot more policy and oversight. And I think that there's going to be a lot of impacts. We're already seeing that in the energy sector. A lot of layoffs and a lot of jobs are being impacted by some of the decisions being made. One of the other things, Brett, is what about the behaviors that we've seen during the pandemic in the workforce? Are those going to stay? Are they going to, hang around? Are we going to have a lot more work from home? There's just a lot of that we don't know. In the course of vaccine,
Sure.
Is that going to be productive or not? So a lot of that in the air that we think will impact us going forward.
No doubt. I think one of the things that we're studying closely, and I'm sure a lot of our clients are as well. And then ultimately, these individuals, as you mentioned, Tim, who may find themselves who perhaps were working in the energy sector, and there may be some closures there. There was already challenges in the oil and energy space even before all of this, and so those individuals. A lot of them in the skilled trade space, especially, very talented, but are going to have to reshift those talents into other spaces. And obviously, we pride ourselves on trying to rematch those skill sets. To that, we have quite a few guys right now that we pulled out of the energy sector in Texas last year. There just wasn't enough consistent work for them that we were very skilled guys, a lot of them very strong in electrical and whatnot, but having to reapply it in a different space.
Yeah.
And so, but I think overall the skilled trade labor supply, I think what we see is it'll continue to lag. I think if anything, I think there are things that happen in 2020 as a result of COVID. You're talking about something that there was already we were already 1 million short in the skilled trade space. Now, obviously, in some spaces, construction and whatnot that slowed down, you got some reallocation of people.
Right.
But as that comes back, those people some will go back, some won't. But I think there's just a lot of things. There's uncertainty. I think one of the big things that we always knew that there was this 5 to 7 year modeling that the baby boomer mechanics and those individuals that had a lot of season, a lot of talent, that they would begin to retire. That a lot of what we did early on 2.5, 3 years ago, Tim, was to start to study that and what those trends were going to be. And I don't think there's any doubt that that COVID 2020 only exasperated that issue.
Sure, accelerated that.
Yes. Yeah. So a lot of those individuals, there were either some companies, did mandatory, furloughs for people of a certain age. Others just elected to stay out of the workforce for a season because of fear of the virus and so forth. And I think we're seeing a lot of them are probably not coming back. If you were 64, before this you were going to work till you were 67. That person has now left the workforce. So that acceleration and need to fill that, I think, is going to be a big issue that we deal with in 20.
Well, not only that, but
21.
those guys are, not only are they just great guys that are at your, place of work or your company, but many times they're the most experienced, and they know how to fix everything, and they know how to repair, and they know how to install, and they were there when you created that line that you depend on. And these guys, left unexpectedly, so there wasn't a transition that took place. And so companies are really having to scramble not only to replace just those resources, but the talent and the experience and the know-how. And so the search for finding those is going to have to extend beyond your normal approach. We've talked about this in other podcasts. You're going to have to rethink the way that you go about getting some of those guys.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, the reason, that our business has performed the way it has in the 2.5 years is that reason. People are recognizing they've got to think broader to solve this problem. I think 2021, coming out of this 2020 pandemic year, only adds to that challenge of finding that talent. The other thing, Tim, that I think will, I've talked to some facilities and I've read some things that, and I think we'll see this in both spaces, both in manufacturing and construction, that there's still this really strong need to create a safe work environment. And so companies and spaces, to do that, they're going to have to do or attempt to do more of their own work in-house. So you're bringing, in the construction, we'll get into that here in a minute, you may be bringing in less subs, because every time you bring in a new group, it adds the potential that they bring issues with them.
Right.
And same in the manufacturing. So I think what's going to happen in the manufacturing is where before maybe you would have brought an outside consultant or somebody. Now you're going to be more likely to try to do more of the work in-house, which means that talent pool has got, it's got to rise. It's got to be stronger.
Yeah, you're going to take that risk internal because of the higher risk of bringing in outside potential for infection and just the mindset that brings in. So that's a great point. And the other thing is just the burden of childcare. Many schools are shut down. There's remote learning, so you have a lot of the folks that you depend on out there. Their husband and wife both work, and with kids at home, many times they have to make a decision about one of the caregivers remaining at home. So that shrinks the pool as well. So there's a lot of things associated with COVID and the pandemic that are going to continue to not only impact directly, but also adjust just the way, I think, going forward, post-pandemic, that you're going to see people operate. So we're going to look at a couple of other things as we delve into these and look at our primary two areas of manufacturing and construction support, and a lot of ancillary services around those two. But one thing is kind of related to bringing work in. It's also this, we believe that global outsourcing, that there's going to be continue to be a risk in depending on global markets and global outreach for not only your supply chain, but also, the people that come to work and support you. So that this idea, I think it's called reshoring, where instead of offshoring, you're bringing the work back. So I think that trend is going to continue to put extra stress and headwinds out there for companies.
Yeah, Tim, there's no doubt, that, we were already seeing a trend since about 2010 of this reshoring concept where you're bringing your supply a little closer to home, so to speak. There's some risk, and there's no doubt that when literally the world began to shut down in 2020, as we continue to still try to reopen it, the ability to get those supplies from overseas, definitely suddenly what a few years ago or many years ago when there was a definite trend in that direction, suddenly became a big issue in that. And so I think we'll definitely continue to see that, which is going to do two things. It's going to bring more manufacturing back, which means a talent pool that was already really thin is now going to have even more needs. So I think, again, back to what we said, you're going to have to think outside of that box as to how you're going to solve that. But then also, I think, and all the things that we read say that you're also going to see an uptick in 2021 and over the next couple years, in that we're going to have to build, some of those facilities are going to have to get built. So from a construction standpoint, I think they're probably not going to be building tall office buildings, but they are going to be building some of these other facilities that will impact this reshoring or bringing the supply back closer to your facilities here in the U.S.
Yeah, speaking of the construction space, since you opened that topic, I think that there's definitely, and as we've spoken to friends and colleagues and people that work in the construction space, there's definitely a shift. There is very much an area, a domain that is growing, and the demand is continues to outpace supply of workers. In others where traditional areas of construction we're not seeing as much of. And you mentioned one of them. We believe that people now, and this is no surprise to you if you're in that industry, if you're working on warehousing, distribution centers, data centers, supply chain supporting businesses, anything that supports the distribution of goods and services, those sort of things will be a big demand in the construction area. Brett, you mentioned earlier that more bringing into your company things that you may have traditionally outsourced to subs. We're going to talk a little bit later about the impact of technology to solve a lot of these issues. In another podcast, we'll kind of tease it a little bit here, but we're seeing a lot of leveraging of technology, and as it relates to the construction space, a need for a fully integrated construction from design, bidding, design, development, preparation of the workspace, the moving the dirt around, all the way through construction and even tenant leasing and so forth. All is an integrated system, and everybody that works within that needs to be within that ecosystem. So there are going to be companies that get out ahead of that and leverage that. We're going to see as being ahead of the curve moving into 2021 and beyond. And a lot of that has to do with, as you mentioned, the need to control the environment and have strict controls for the safety of your workers, and that means everybody needs to be within a similar system and approach. So the traditional days of having 6 or 8 or 10 or 12 or 50 subs on a site, I think we're going to see that dramatically change over the next coming years with respect to the construction space.
Yeah, I think a lot of the general contractors right now, they're the biggest, the really large GCs. We're based here in Omaha, and Kiewit is based here, which was a great company and a very large company, and they're ahead of this, and that they do all their own skilled trade internally. They don't source all of that out, and so I think, granted, not every small GC is going to probably have that same ability, but I think you're going to see more and more of them bringing that back. One, because either they can't find the subs to do the work, or two, like you said, I don't think you can emphasize enough that at least for 2021 and maybe beyond, the rethinking of safety, and how you're going to manage your work environment to keep employees safe is front and center in everybody's mind.
Yeah, and absolutely. Not only safe, but if you have an indication of, we've seen it before, that there's a COVID outbreak or an indication there, it'll shut a project down for 2 weeks. Everybody goes in quarantine, and that project gets delayed by 2 weeks, and that gets multiplied and moved, day for day, slip to the right in your schedule when that happens. So there's going to be a real focus on that, and for what we do and our model is providing and looking for the skilled tradesmen and craftsmen that a company like yours may need, where traditionally you have depended on subs to fill that niche. That's kind of an area where we might be able to be a good solution for you, because we provide those guys who are our employees, but when they work for you on that big project you have, they assimilate into your workforce, into what your standards and structure are for a period of time that you need them for. So in effect, it kind of acts like an in-house sub that you leverage us for. So that we feel like we can help with that and help you overcome some of those needs. So there's a couple of other things that, kind of other items that kind of relate to this and other industries where we see trends going in 2021. I mean, you tee up a few of those maybe?
Yeah, for sure. And I think you bring up, I want to jump back just a second. I think Tim brings up a great point in that in the last 10 years, I think a lot of the reason that the GCs, general contractors, have elected to outsource the sub work and so forth is really, most of them would say, because we can't find the talent. And so now, with a company like ours and there's other companies that do similar work to what we do, especially in the construction space, is the ability to go out and find that talent and get it to you is there. That opportunity is there, and I think it's going to be looked at a lot deeper. With that said, one of the things that is a concern, there's no doubt that in 2020, while the manufacturing sector, especially the essential manufacturing sector that we work a lot and provide a lot of our skilled workers into, an area that no doubt got hit hard in 2020 was construction.
Yeah.
And so depending on your state and the level of shutdown and so forth, obviously some areas had more impact than others. But one of the big concerns is a lot of those individuals that were in that space, the construction space, skilled laborers, they were forced to go find other work. And so part of the concern is how many of them will come back. We've seen the same thing in the oil and energy. As we mentioned earlier, we've hired several really talented electrical, mechanical people that were working on a rig or in an oil field or something. It's the same talent. Electric's electric. It's just where you apply it at. And we've had some of them specifically tell us, it was a big transition for them to come into manufacturing, but the stability of it, they see as a real plus. So I think, again, some of those are not going to go back. Same with construction. I think that'll put more pressure in the construction world to find that talent. And so, the other big thing from a construction perspective, we mentioned it, in the beginning, Tim, you did on the change in administration. We have a new administration. Like anytime you have a new administration, they're going to bring their agenda and the things they want to get done. And right now, one of the big talks in the current administration is this $1.9 trillion infrastructure. Now, it's not just infrastructure. There's a whole variety of things in that, but a big sector of that, or a big chunk of that money they're trying to get approved to spend is for infrastructure. So that will be roads, bridges, all those things. It's a pretty, what all falls into that is pretty broad. But depending on the success of getting that passed, is going to throw a lot of dollars in that direction, which is going to put a lot of emphasis on hiring, people to hire, big equipment, decent mechanics, all those kinds of things.
Yeah, and I think too the new administration, whether you're a fan or not, the fact of the matter is the reality that we have to work through some of the changes and adjustments, and one of which we're hearing a lot of is that maybe think back 5-6 years ago where there was some would say an onerous amount of policy and oversight and quote red tape to get construction projects started. So there'll be a lot more focus on environment, global change, global climate change. There may be delays in getting big projects going, and the emphasis to be able to get out ahead of that. So I think that companies need to be thinking in the construction world about the impact of that, and also some jobs and where skilled laborers have seen a resurgence in the last few years may be looked at to to try to look at a different industry. And so that's a reality of what we're facing going forward. We talked a little bit, Brett, about technology and the impact of technology, and we've seen a ton of it. And necessity is the mother of invention, I think Benjamin Franklin said, and we've seen a lot of new invention and innovation over the last year because of the necessity of COVID-19. I think it's going to accelerate this idea that some have been calling the fourth industrial revolution, which we're going to spend more time on in later podcasts, but maybe we should just touch on that a little bit because it does impact near-term 2021.
Yeah, no doubt. So yeah, we're like Tim said, we're going to probably tease this out a little bit. It's something that we're spending a fair amount of time just studying it. I think it has a potential to have a lot of impact on the level and the skill level of the talent that you're going to have to find as we kind of transition. I don't know if it's a 10-year process or a 20-year process or more, but to Tim's point, we didn't coin this term. Somebody far smarter than us did, called the fourth industrial revolution. But basically, I read a quote from that study that basically said that 98% of organizations report that a single hour of downtime cost them over $100,000. Now, that was in an ebook done by Hitachi Solutions, so I give them credit where credit is due. But the idea of this, and like I said, we're just going to unpack it a little bit and then probably spend a full podcast talking about this, because I really do think as a manufacturing company specific, just like we talked earlier, there's things that 2020 and the pandemic, there's a lot of things that created. Reshoring, how you find talent, what do you got to do for safety. But I think another thing is the ability to be more efficient in your facility and to create a more predictive maintenance versus a reactive maintenance. Right. We believe that this is a trend that we're going to see, and I think the reason, we talk about a lot of time. There's a lot of businesses. Uber would be a great example that most people would be aware of. If not for the iPhone or the phone technology, that company doesn't exist. You couldn't do that in 1950, and so. Well, this is kind of the same deal. Is the technology between the cloud and what they refer to as the Internet of Things, which the Internet of Things is basically the ability through technology to do what it says, to connect physical objects so that they can share data and information. So the ability in these facilities on a manufacturing line, I was in the manufacturing facility for 30 plus years, 35 years in that industry. We fixed things when they broke.
Right.
That's what we did. And then we paid the cost, and we hoped it wouldn't take very long. But it always took longer than you thought. and so that was a reality. It's the reality that most, we have a client right now that's busy as busy. Their business is booming. And I talked to the director of maintenance on Monday, and he said, sanitation got water and electrical panel, and we got a line down. It's going to be down for 3 days. That is going to cost them a bunch of money. Now, I don't know if predictive maintenance would have solved that one. It's not going to solve everything, but this is a big area, and I think the emphasis for us is not just to say this is where it's going and we want to unpack it further, but the skilled technician that it's going to take to understand how to operate all of that type of data and sensory type equipment is different than the guy probably who can just do a more of a mechanical. Those guys are golden, and but they're not probably going to be the exact same guy.
Yeah, you think about it. Anybody out there drives a vehicle. If you bought one in the last 3 years, your vehicle. Everything is sensor enabled. So the same thing applies in a end-to-end sense for manufacturing as well as construction. Everything is just in time. Everything is enabled from your supply chain, your raw materials, all the way out to your customers. Everything is interconnected. Not only are you doing predictive maintenance, but you're also doing predictive supply, and all the other trends that and artificial intelligence and the advanced algorithms can allow you to understand your entire ecosystem. And the companies that understand that and start thinking about the skilled trades that you're going to need to be able to make all that work. We have an example of a company like a large poultry manufacturer got out ahead of needing to increase the technology of their equipment and machinery because the labor wasn't there to do that. So it's a great idea. They put in a lot of advanced technology systems in place. The problem is they didn't anticipate the need for people who knew how to fix all that stuff. Yep. So the same thing's going to happen here. So we're going to talk more about that. This fourth industrial revolution, we think it's really going to be a game changer for your industry. So kind of as we wrap things up and we're looking in general, these are economists and people that look at the whole broad spectrum of our industries. And there are those that are looking at things where they think there are going to be early winners. There already have been winners. Some that are really rebounding in the middle of the rebounding. And frankly, there's going to be some that are going to be challenged to come back to pre-pandemic levels. So we just thought we'd touch on some of those. And if you're in that industry, you probably know this already, but perhaps this might be something you can use.
Yeah, I mean, as Tim indicated, some of these are probably pretty obvious to a lot of us, and we look at it at maybe a little more detail to say, where's the demand going to be specifically for us in the skilled trade space, but then in addition, there's going to be other labor challenges that industries are going to have to deal with. But the obvious one in this pandemic that saw a huge surge is anything that's e-commerce related. So and even the big box stores. So we do a fair amount of work in the food manufacturing space, and those facilities that were supplying product to grocery stores were as busy could be. For a big reason is, unfortunately, most restaurants were not serving food, or at least not in a normal state. So people, good or bad, were buying a lot more and cooking a lot more at home. Thankfully for the restaurants, some people were at least doing carry out. But that everything that works around that, whether it's distribution, whether it's delivery, so transportation, all of that, anything in that space, you now have. I mean, you can't go very far without seeing an Amazon van coming down the road. So there are fleets of these vehicles, and a move to where a lot of them are going to be electrical, and the ability, who's going to work on those and who's going to fix those, and all those things I think are going to be a big deal. We just mentioned a minute ago, what was deemed essential. The food and beverage, as bad as things were through 2020, when you walked in the grocery store, for the most part, other than disinfectant wipes, pretty much everything you were looking for was there. And that gave people at least a sense of, if you walk in and the grocery store shelves are empty, it's panic time.
Yeah. So there's definitely a growth and surge and upswing there, and companies that we're seeing rebound, so starting to make a comeback, and some of these are pretty intuitive, but restaurant suppliers starting to make a rebound, clothing stores, other retailers, slight rebound there. So they're starting to see some life. Manufacturing and suppliers to medical and dental, non-essential. So there was a lot of uptick for COVID-related, but non-essential medical and suppliers to those goods and services, those are making a big comeback, as well as home goods and services. So a lot of people did a lot of renovation on their homes and home improvements. So that sector, and small construction firms that may be doing home rehabs and remodels and things like that, they're making a big rebound as well.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, obviously there's been a lot of services and a lot of individuals impacted the most in the areas that were either what we would say damaged or at least paused. Obviously, hospitality and travel and tourism, probably had one of the toughest. I am, I guess, a little bit encouraged. I was on a flight earlier this week, and it was probably 80% full. There was somebody in the middle seat next to me, and so we're having to get used to that again, which is probably a good thing for that industry.
Yeah.
A lot of other things have just changed. You're probably less likely to walk in a bank lobby, which has made maybe the way you do banking different. So things are changing in that. I think there'll be just a lot of other areas. One big area, and you can make your own judgment whether this is good or bad. But the entertainment and arts, have been impacted, greatly. It's definitely opened up opportunities for other forms of entertainment in that space, but it's definitely been hit hard.
Yeah, so hopefully all these will make a big comeback. We hope for nothing but the best if you're in one of those industries, but we do think there's tons of opportunity. And for what we do in providing help for you to find the skilled craftsmen and laborers that you need to get what you need done. So we're here to help you in that. So just to summarize what we see, the things we're going to continue to watch closely, and we encourage you to do the same. We'll look for the effectiveness of these vaccines, how they're going to take, how people are going to respond to them. The mindset that people have, is there still fear and uncertainty, or is that starting to be tamped down? Are people going to respond to the new leadership and the administration? What are these new politics and policies roll out? What's the government spending and subsidies going to look like? Is it going to be more regulation, more oversight? So we're watching that closely as well. And then what sort of things are going to shift back to normal, and what are going to be the, quote, new normal going forward? Travel, eating out, conferences, trade shows, things like that. Is it going to continue to be remote work versus in person? Which industries are going to trend one way or the other? And then commercial construction, is that going to come back? Are we starting to see that trend up? And I'll just say one industry to really watch, and I came out of this in my past, is look at the transportation and rail industry. Is rail industry and shipping on rail increases? That's a great arbiter of things that are, or at least a harbinger of things to come with respect to construction and growth. So we'll be watching all of that here in the coming year. We appreciate your time today as we've tried to lay out some things to look forward to in 2021. We're certainly glad to see 2020 behind us. And we ask you to join us back here on the next edition of the Skillwork Forum. Until then, see you later.